evening. Sky Sports News are reporting that Liverpool will meet with Raheem Sterling later this week for contract talks, and they're reporting he will tell them he does not intend to sign a new deal. He does not intend to sign a new deal. They're saying it's because he feels the club have tried to bully him into signing a new contract and that he doesn't think they have protected him from negative headlines. He's also angry that details of earlier contract offers have been leaked. As for Liverpool, they say their position has not changed. He will not be sold. He will not be leaving. Jamie Carragher, your reaction?
Talking of leaks from the club, this started with the agent. 6-9 months ago, the very start of the season, I recall there being stories in the papers. Now, listen, we work in the media now for Sky, I write for the newspaper, Gary's the same, so you know what goes on. And I know there's things getting fed to press about Raheem Sterling, trying to put pressure on Liverpool to do a deal with him or sell him, whatever way you want to look at it. I know Raheem Sterling, I've played with him, he's a great kid. I'm not saying that now. I seen him the weekend, shook his hand, said hello to him. And he's not some flash young kid. I hope people at home don't, or maybe these stories may get the wrong impression of him. Gary's worked with him. He's not loud, you know, in people's faces. He loves his football. But he's talking about moving club. He doesn't need to move club, I don't think. I think for his football development, he needs to stay at Liverpool. He plays every week. He needs to change his agent, if there's one thing he needs to change. And the thing I don't like about it is, Raheem's still a kid, but I think he's old enough now. He's 20 years of age. For a 20-year-old kid to be taking on Liverpool Football Club over a contract, to the pit of my stomach, that just winds me up, angers me, that a kid, and the fella about him, I think, has had a relationship with him for a long time, this agent, and Raheem Sterling will obviously move on at some stage. Of course, he doesn't want to be at the club. Brendan Rodgers has come out and said he won't be going this summer. He's still got 2 years left. There's still one game to go. Why not leave this till after that? But it looks like a tactic to me to try and force the club's hand. The lad's from London. He obviously wants to go back home to London. But I still can't get that out of my head of a young kid trying to take the club on. Now, the way it'll come out, it's not about money. It might not be about money, you know. It'll be about trophies or about playing in the Champions League. If it's about trophies, last season Liverpool were that close away from winning the league. He was fantastic. Now, they're not close this year. I don't think they'll be close next year, if I'm being totally honest. But Liverpool had a chance for a trophy this year in the semi-final against Aston Villa. Where was Raheem Sterling? If you want to win trophies and you want big money, which is what he wants, good luck to him. We all want to make as much as we can. I wouldn't have a problem with anyone. The club can say no if they don't want to give him it. But if you want a big trophy, they don't get given to you. You've got to earn them. You've got to play well in big games. What did Liverpool do in the Champions League this season? Nothing. What did Raheem Sterling do? Nothing. Semi-final, Aston Villa, one of the worst performances you'll ever see from a Liverpool team in a big game, a semi-final, a final. I played in teams that maybe didn't have as much talent as this team or what they showed last year, but we get over the line somehow by fighting and getting through it. Where was he in the semi-final? You want to win trophies, you've got to perform at the highest level for Liverpool, who are a huge club. The semi-final was the biggest game this season for Liverpool. And not just him, the whole team were found wanting. But if he wants to win trophies, he's got to deliver in big games, and he hasn't done that yet. And for a 20-year-old kid and his agent to be taking on the club, there's nothing worse than that. Forget his performances, how much money he wants. You just keep your mouth shut. But he'll move on in years to come. But how will he be thought of for the rest of his career? You've got to think of how you're thought of as well, not just your ability. And it's about time his agent stopped leaking stories. Never mind talking about the football club leaking stories.
I think I've got 2 points to make. One, I agree with him that I work with him, he's a good kid and he wants to play football. But don't use the word agent, representative. He is being represented by somebody, and that person has a huge responsibility. We're never going to get rid of agents out of the game, and that is something that I have a huge problem with, always have had, because I genuinely believe that you should grow yourself, that you should make your own mistakes. I believe that every single football player should be made to sit on every single contract negotiation, that no financial happening should go on in their lives without them being across it and being aware of the decision. That's not to say they have to go and sit and negotiate with a chairman or a businessman, but to be in the room, be aware of what's going on. However, that's never going to happen. That's dream world, that's utopia. However, they have a responsibility, you just said there, it's not just to negotiate money, it's to grow them as people, to grow them as individuals, to ensure they do the right things and give them good advice throughout their career. That is what you're there to do. Liverpool is obviously a great football club, and Raheem Sterling is playing for a great football club, and they're giving him his opportunity. He is at a good football club, and at this moment in time, he's got 2 years left on his contract. Liverpool are saying they won't sell him. And that agent, it cannot be the right thing to go out there publicly and make these sorts of noises. It just cannot be, for Raheem. Because if you are representing a young person well as a football player, your job is to keep them out of the headlines like this. Your job is to make the football headlines, not make the quote controversial headlines. So Raheem Sterling tomorrow, the day after, he's going to be driving through the city of Liverpool, and there are going to be people looking at him where he's going to have his headlines all over the back pages of the paper, whichever way you look at it, he'll come through it, he'll come out the other side, he'll be stronger for it in the end. But they're unnecessary headlines. They're not required, they're not needed. And in football, you're going to get enough bad headlines because they come and hit you when you play for clubs like Liverpool or Manchester United or City or Chelsea, Arsenal, you play for England. He's going to have enough headlines. All those players that play for those clubs are going to have enough headlines. You don't need to chase them. There are ways to do things, and I think that guidance is important for these young kids. They're not businessmen. They're 17, 18, 19-year-old. They're babies, by the way. You speak to these lads, they're babies. Now, you might argue, you go and speak to your 16-year-old, 17-year-old boy and ask them to do financial negotiations, commercial deals, go and, buy your first house. No one can do that at 16, 17 and do it well. You're relying upon people to do it well for you. You're relying on people to give you sound advice. That's the first thing I've got to say. The second thing is, from Liverpool's point of view, I don't think they've particularly handled contracts well over the last 18 months. You think of Steven Gerrard, I know that we've given him a great send-off this weekend, it's rightly deserved, but you think that could have been handled a little bit better? Someone who I think probably had been, handed a contract a year ago probably would have signed. I think that Luis Suarez seemed a bit strange, the way in which his contract was dealt with, and he ended up leaving. Jordan Henderson, I think, signed now, but that seemed to drag on a little bit as well. Now, obviously, Raheem Sterling. So I think Liverpool need to nip it in the bud, because it's 3 or 4 times it's happened in the last sort of couple of years. So they might have a little issue that they need to deal with themselves on how they go about doing this internally. And look, we haven't got a clue. I haven't got a clue. Jamie might know more than me, but I haven't got a clue what's gone on with regards to Raheem's contract or the others I've just spoken about. But certainly, if you're having players grumbling about wanting to leave or leaving in circumstances that you don't want them to, particularly people that we're talking about like Suarez and Gerrard's leaving, Raheem's now obviously talking. I don't think Jordan probably was ever going to go, but there was rumblings at one time that his contract was rolling on. I think they've got to obviously sort it out and make sure it's a lot more efficient, a lot more clean, a lot more, they get the process right so that basically players aren't in a position whereby this is happening. It's always going to happen once, but when it happens twice and it happens 3 times, then I think it probably starting to get a little bit sloppy. And they're the only 2 things I've got to say on it.
OK, as things stand, it looks like a standoff. How does this end?
The club had a similar situation with Luis Suarez. He wanted to go to Arsenal. I think he had 2 years to go. Brendan Rodgers, the owner, was steadfast in that he's not going. They made Luis Suarez train with the reserves. Brendan Rodgers came out a few months ago and said he'll definitely be here next season. I can't see him sign a new contract. I'd be very surprised if he does. But looking at the owner's experience, what he's done before with a bigger player, the best player at the club at the time, I wouldn't say Raheem's. Well, Raheem's not far off that. I would say he's an excellent young player. But what Suarez was to Liverpool 2 years ago, and the owner made them stay, Brendan Rodgers ended up putting them with the reserves, shows that the people at the top of the club are very strong and they won't bow or weaken to Raheem's demands. I just think it's a stupid move from the owner, because you should look at things like that, how the club have reacted to this before. They won't be bullied. He's saying, we feel we've been bullied. They've been trying to bully the club in certain situations from day one. And I think they should have looked at the history of John Henry, the owner, Brendan Rodgers with Luis Suarez, and thought, this club and these people involved won't be bullied. So I fully expect Raheem to be there next season, but eventually he's going to go.
I've seen these situations turn round from this sort of situation where a player can be happy again. So I don't think it's a case where all is lost. I think it's about communication, getting themselves in a room and sorting it out. I think for Liverpool, they've not qualified for the Champions League. They've lost Luis Suarez last season. I don't think it's easy to take money and then replace players like Raheem Sterling or Luis Suarez or Steven Gerrard. They have got a huge void in their football club, Liverpool. They've lost you, they've lost Steven Gerrard in the last 12 months, and that hurts. That hurts badly, to replace personalities who control the dressing room, who get a grip of situations like this, by the way. Because if you think about, you've got young players in the dressing room, who would be the first person you'd go to? You'd go to Jamie Carragher, you'd go to Steven Gerrard, and you'd say, look, have a word with the boy, have a word with him, see what's happening, let's talk it through with him. Those characters aren't there at Liverpool anymore. So who's talking to Raheem now in the dressing room? Who's talking, next season when obviously there's a big leadership void gone? So they've got to try and replace you, they've got to try and replace Steven Gerrard, they've got to try and replace Luis Suarez. They're out of the Champions League. The owners will spend money, and I'm not saying they haven't spent money, they spend money to an extent, but it's not what you would call there. It's just that little bit below the level of, you say, likes of Chelsea and City and United. So I think that there is either going to have to be, obviously the stadium's being renewed, there's going to have to be a big investment of some kind, and they're going to have to shock everybody into thinking, because obviously it's a great football club, it's won a lot of trophies, but it's now, I don't know how many years it is without a league title, but it's going on far too long for Liverpool's point of view.
But you can't have a 20-year-old kid putting a gun to the club's head every year saying, you haven't quite done this, or you haven't done this, I'm not happy, you haven't qualified for the Champions League, you haven't won this, you haven't done that. Is that going to happen every single year he's there, even if he does sign a contract? You can't have that as a young player, any player, at any age. Your job's there is to go and win them. It's the players who win the trophies. So when you sign a contract and you play for Liverpool, it's your job to take the club to those places. We had plenty of bad times. Look at Steven Gerrard, he got the send-off. He gets that send-off because at times he stayed through bad times and he dragged Liverpool forward to honours. That's Raheem's job. He's one of the best players in the squad.
He had his up and downs as well, it's fair to say, along the way.
Stevie?
No, he did. He had his up and downs.
Of course.
There was up and downs along the way. There were moments where could he have left, might have left, thought about leaving. So it wasn't all plain stay. If you look back through careers of football players, even players who've been one club men and stayed at the clubs, there's ups and downs and obstacles along the way, and this could just be an obstacle. It doesn't have to be
you're totally right. You remember the Chelsea situation with Stevie, but there's none of this public agents feeding story. This is what I'm talking about. A 20-year-old kid taken on. If it was happening at Manchester United or Arsenal, listen, it doesn't matter whatever a club it is, but you think of huge clubs, what they've done in the past, how long they've been going as a young kid, thinks he can come along him as agent, put pressure on them, stories for days now before the last game of the season. I mean, it's been a nightmare at the end of a season for everyone at Liverpool. It now just makes it even worse. Well, just say nothing. Let the summer build on. There will be talk, but say nothing. Keep your counsel. Why are we feeding stories to the press and creating more problems for Raheem? How does he go into training tomorrow morning and train with Brendan Rodgers and the players? I don't believe that. If I had to go into training tomorrow after my agent had been speaking to press, we would all talk about it. I wouldn't want to go in. I wouldn't want to show my face. I'd be embarrassed. I'll just speak to the other players. I'll just speak to the coaching staff, the women on reception. These are all part of the club. All these people, the fella on the gate. You're talking like you don't want to be there. It's a big family, Liverpool, other clubs. It's not right to again be feeding stories. You just need to say, just keep your mouth shut, and whatever will be, will be.
I might go for some lunch in Liverpool tomorrow. Sounds like the right place to be.
There's more on that Raheem Sterling story on Sky Sports News 8.